When you clicked on this video, you were probably expecting me to talk about Bed Wars or the GOAT minigame Bridges. But no, this is something much better. I don't think Mini is a fair representation of the type of game this is. And trust me, I know what Mini looks like. Decked Out 2 is one of the most amazing Minecraft minigames ever made. The game is a deck building dungeon crawler. It was inspired by this board game called Clank. Now, if you've never heard about the board game Clank, well, it's Clank and awesome. I've never actually played it, I just wanted to say that joke. But basically, it's Decked Out 2, but instead of running around in this immersive 3D map, you just roll the dice and move the guy around, I guess. I got bored watching the explanation video, to be honest. But a lot of the mechanics are inspired from this board game. Essentially, the main goal of Decked Out 2 consists of you, the player, extracting the artifact that was hidden in this dungeon. At the start of the round, you will be dropped into the start of the dungeon with a map and a compass guiding you to where the artifact is hidden. Your goal is to essentially follow this compass to the correct floor and location and drop it off to receive your artifact. Very simple, right? Now, what's not simple is the fact that this dungeon consists of 4 different levels, has several different monsters, different paths and variations of each path which can be taken, different hazards that can be triggered at different times, and lastly, the spirits that haunt the dungeon. You do not want to face these guys. Now, there's obstacles in the dungeon for sure, otherwise the game would be boring. It's not just a simple stroll through these beautifully designed floors, but they're not completely random. The game functions using 3 main mechanics that operate throughout the whole map. The first and most important is Clank. You generate Clank every time you create noise during your run. If you gain more Clank, you risk spawning the Vexes throughout the dungeon, making your escape pretty much impossible. So your main goal is to remain as quiet as possible while making your way downtown. Not walking too fast though. Now, even if you manage to get through this process without generating a lot of Clank, once you find and drop off the compass in exchange for the artifact, you automatically gain 3 Clank, making your exit much more intense. If you manage to reach 10 Clank during your run, you will anger the dungeon and release the spirits, which will chase you and most likely kill you. Next is hazards. I mentioned these a little before, but the hazards are essentially just obstacles that become triggered throughout your run, which can either obstruct a path or just make it much harder to get through. This is done in one of 2 ways. Either the hazard will just completely close a path, such as these ice doors shutting, or these stairs being removed, or the parkour will increase in difficulty by making objects move or allow mobs to spawn where they couldn't before. The last mechanic consists of the various treasures that are dropped throughout the dungeon. These treasures consist of loot that you can pick up throughout your runs through these various loot drop locations that are scattered among the floors, and they determine how much you can buy, play, and whether you win the game or not. The first of these treasures is the coins and the crowns. 4 coins can be traded in for a crown, and the crowns can be used to buy items from the store outside the game. These can be collected and combined throughout all of your runs. The more important of the 2 are these frost embers, and these really determine whether you win or not. These frost embers are mainly given to the player if the player is able to make it out alive after having collected the hidden artifact. However, they can also be found as a treasure drop throughout the map, which is something I will be touching on more later just because some of the cool decks you can build. Now, after you escape with the artifact, you receive a certain number of frost embers depending on how difficult the artifact was to receive. With these frost embers, you can only spend them within the shop right after your run, and therefore you cannot carry them over. So if you're 1 frost ember short, there's no loan that you can take. You either buy something cheaper or cry like a little baby. These frost embers are mainly used to buy different cards that pop up in the shop, helping you build your deck the more you play the game. Although this is a single player game, it was originally constructed by Tango, one of the players who plays on the Hermitcraft server, as a 9-week competition between all the other players to see who could receive the most tomes. These tomes were essentially the winning mechanic that was created for this server, where players could trade in the frost embers they earned through running the dungeon to claim their wins from any successful runs. The treasure mechanic is where we start to see a little bit of difference between the gameplay that I watch on the Hermitcraft server and the single player experience, and this is something I'm going to touch on a little later. Okay, that was a lot of info, and there are a lot of different mechanics. It's pretty cool, right? Well, guess what? This was all made in vanilla Minecraft. Yes, everything. The sliding doors, the cards. I've been displaying footage of the runs. You see this little map that you carry each round? Yeah, it's all physically made. It's actually right outside the castle that houses Decked Out 2. You can see it update in real time yourself. If this is the first time you're hearing about this minigame and the Hermitcraft server, well, it's just a group of Minecrafters who play together on a single server, and they all have insane building and redstone capabilities. Like, look at this world. This is just their normal hub. You want to see the hub me and my friends built? It looks like this. And I was genuinely proud of these lampposts as well. Like damn, this is just insanely humbling. This isn't even the end of it either. I haven't even started touching on the map that Tango built for this game. Yes, it's 4 levels deep, but there are so many intricacies that are built into this thing. the man-made Easter eggs, and not just like this little guy sitting on a shelf. Actually, some of the Easter eggs are like that, but I'm talking about like shadows of evil level of depth in some of these Easter eggs. I'm not sure what kind of minigames you guys played in Minecraft, but when I saw this minigame, impressed was an understatement to how I felt. Me and my friends used to make some minigames to play in our Minecraft servers. In one of the servers we set up in the 9th grade, we used to make shopping districts where people could set up shops. One of my friends decided to build a gambling shop. His main game was called the Secret Diamond. Basically, there were 25 chests laid out next to each other like this, and he would put a diamond into one of the chests, and you would have to guess which chest he put it in. Well, before he put the diamond in a random chest, he would ask you to go stand in the cobble house next door to make sure you don't peek at where he's putting the diamond. But I had devised a plan. I would download the X-ray mod and watch him put the diamond in the chest. He caught on after I guessed the diamond right the second time, but it's still one of the funniest things to happen on one of our Minecraft servers. Anyways, these are the kinds of minigames a normal person is able to build. So thinking about the fact that the game has not one, but multiple mechanics with no mods installed is insane. And it's not only the mechanics that are made in vanilla. This game consists of 4 different worlds. Level 1, the Frozen Crypt. If you're going in blind, you're met with these big sliding doors that immediately set the tone for the game, heavy and grinding against the floor, letting you know that you're not going back, even though technically you can go back, but let's not talk about that. As soon as you walk through, you're met with an ice maze, and you only have 2 options, left or right. You immediately feel suffocated, and the mood for the first floor is set. The first floor mainly consists of small hallways, and as you walk down these halls, you might find a little friend. If this is your first run and you're going in blind, you're gonna get jump scared here. Your only options are to break the line of sight by finding a path through another hallway or retreating to where you came from and wasting your time. If you're not used to Ravagers, this could become a bit of an issue, especially because you're not dealing with just one Ravager at a time. Other than the enemies you're gonna face, the ambiance of the first level is great. All the hermits in the Hermitcraft server are great builders, and honestly, Tango's world building in this game was really good. Once you get past the ice maze, you'll find a little dungeon area. This building here keeps the same idea of using walls and hallways to create tension between you and the Ravagers. Once you find the key on level 1, you can start making your way down to level 2. You'll immediately notice that the layout is much more open than level 1, while also having Ravagers roaming around. This level consists of 3 main areas. There are 2 main entrances to the first area of level 2, and you're immediately met with a nether-based world, a complete 180 from level 1. There are 3 paths to the second area of level 2, filled with bridges, mushroom paths, and spikes. These areas all lead to the last section of level 2, which is Willie's Cove. After picking up a level 3 key, you can start making your way down to the 3rd level. As you enter level 3, you begin to notice that the map style begins to change. The first 2 levels were very bright and easy to see, but these next 2 levels incorporate darker colors. The deep dark, as described by its name, is very dark. Not only are the blocks dark, but the area is filled with wardens instead of Ravagers, which constantly blind you if you make too much noise. Not only that, but level 3 is the first level that incorporates multiple floors. The artifact can spawn on any one of these floors, and with hazards triggering and Clank being stacked, it's not an easy time. But if you reach this level and manage to find a level 4 key, you can make your way down 1 more floor. The 4th level is the holy grail of this game, holding the artifacts with the highest ember count, wardens roaming around, and honestly, some of the coolest hazards that the game has to offer. This floor also holds all the secrets to this game, and the key to beating the decked out 2 Easter egg. Diving deeper into Tango's level design, levels 1 and 2 are known as the Ravager levels. These levels create more of a reactive style of gameplay within Decked Out 2. The Ravagers cause more running, hiding, you have to lure them away to get to where you're going. It's about speed a lot of the time, which when mixed in with the fact that more movement causes more clank, creates scenarios in which players are forced to think about how they want to move through the level, and how fast. Since level 1 is filled with these tight hallways, it forces the player to learn how to hide from the Ravagers, and also how to reposition them to ensure that you have a safe way to pass. There's a lot of hiding behind walls, peeking your head out to say hello, and then quickly dashing to break line of sight once they've moved. It creates a big peekaboo playstyle, which the players needed to master if they wanted to move forward. As I said before, the second level of the dungeon is more open. Instead of hiding behind walls, you need to learn how to wrap the Ravagers around the pillars to progress. And since it's an open map, sometimes you do need to pay the toll to get by them. The Wardens, on the other hand, play more like a sneak mission. Wardens get set off by any noises made by the player within a 16 block radius, so you need to perma sneak around the map. This completely slows down the game and prioritizes your ability to get around the map without alerting the wardens. In my opinion, this is not as hard. Alerting the wardens requires the players to make noises, and both the warden and the clank sensors are set off using the same sounds. So if you're avoiding the wardens, you're also avoiding the clank sensors. The game's environment is no longer forcing you into situations that cause you to generate clank, which makes these monsters less of a struggle to conquer. If you have good play against the wardens, you are rewarded with an easier run. This was actually seen as too easy initially. The first time the Hermitcraft players tried level 3, there weren't as many pressure plates on these bridges. Tango went in and patched the map, adding pressure plates all along these areas. But even with this update, once the players learned the map, it became super easy to escape level 3 of the dungeon. The play against the wardens also mostly consisted of routing yourself away from them. Now, don't get me wrong, routing in video games can be a lot of fun and very interesting. Games like Breath of the Wild Bingo had you learning where certain items and quests were to get you to use your knowledge of the game to find the fastest way to complete all the challenges on the board. This game only has a fraction of that. Although there is this aspect of routing that forces you to adapt with the levels of clank and different hazards, which as I said before is like super cool and fun. The added wardens on these floors just forces you to take the longer routes back home. Instead of the gameplay being about quick decision making made by players to avoid the threat of death like it is on levels 1 and 2, it just kind of boils down to taking the high road because some hunk of a man is occupying the entire road. Playing against the Ravagers, on the other hand, forces you to run away. The Skulk sensors do not like this, so the players have to actively think about their movement and decision making. There isn't one playstyle that will help lead you to a win, which in my opinion is much more fun to play and makes watching all the different perspectives of the hermits a way more entertaining experience. The environment and monster design aren't the only things that make the levels interesting. There are these little tips that you learn from the map as you run the dungeon more. One of the coolest in my opinion is the difference between nighttime and daytime Willie. Who's Willie? You're probably wondering. Willie is a drowned that holds a trident that guards the cove on the second floor. Willie's Cove. You see how that all comes back around? Anyways, if you're running the dungeon on hard difficulty or higher, you're going to encounter him essentially every single run because you need to cross this pond to reach the 3rd level of the dungeon. Yes, there is this path on the right, but with needing to find a key and everything, it's rarely used. Now before you start any run in Decked Out 2, you're going to need to sleep in this bed. The intended use for this bed is to make sure you spawn in this room to collect your items after the run, but sleeping in this bed also plays a crucial role in how Willie behaves. If you didn't know, drowned in the daytime act differently than drowned at night. During the day, the drowned are more passive and won't throw tridents at you if you're outside of the water. They will still attack you if you decide to dip your little toes into the water. They'll pierce those babies no problem. At night though, they're like an 808, which if you don't know essentially means they're like a crash out. They'll throw a trident at you no matter where you stand. They don't care. In the water, off to the side on the boat, they're gonna get those little piggies, bro. In the dungeon, this matters a lot because you don't have a lot of room to move around. There are 3 main entrances into Willie's Cove, and 5 if you're lucky enough to have the jump boost card played at the right time. Depending on your RNG before you reach Willie's Cove, you're going to be forced to enter this room using one of these main entrances. Now, where Willie decides to sit around and which entrance you decide to use directly affects the outcome of the game. If Willie's far away and it's daytime, you're going to spend a little more time finding him because he's going to be in stealth mode. If you don't spot him before you enter the water to cross the pond, he's going to be able to surprise attack you out of nowhere. And the more time you spend looking for him, the more your hazard block begins to run out, affecting your ability to make it out of the dungeon. Now, with daytime Willie, you at least get the chance to look for him before you enter the water. If it's nighttime Willie though, this guy is going to start throwing things at you the second you reach the area. This forces you to play way faster, potentially running around, setting off more clank, making your escape even harder. Because of this, it's super important for you to know what time of day it is before you start the run. Now, as I said before, you're mostly going to be getting in contact with Willie on hard mode or higher. If you're running harder difficulties, which is likely going to be the case if you have a full deck, you are going to be spending 20, 40, 60 minutes in this dungeon during a single run. The day and night cycle only lasts around 20 minutes in Minecraft, so Willie is going to be changing his behavior a lot during your run, which can create a lot of chaos while trying to escape the dungeon after successfully leaving the 3rd level. It just adds another layer to your decision making while playing the game. In the context of the Hermitcraft server, these players are running the dungeon one after another, sometimes in lines of 4 or more. There is a reset period between each one where the game goes through a cleanup phase, making sure the dungeon is ready for the next person. After each player runs a dungeon, they'll lure all the enemies with them right to the start of the map. This makes it 10 times harder for the players to traverse the dungeon right at the beginning, forcing them to loop the enemies, and in the case of Willie, forcing them to dodge his tridents earlier than usual. There are also these side quests that you have the chance to do. One of these is repairing Rusty. If you're lucky enough to find a Rusty repair kit during your run, you can go find Rusty on level 2 and repair him, giving you a bunch of embers, coins, and crowns in return. There are also a bunch of sneaky traps laid out within the map that you need to discover on your own. For example, on level 3, if you climb this specific ladder, you will trigger the pressure plate and drop yourself, alerting the wardens. These are things that you need to watch out for, and things that you will begin to notice more as you play the game. Not only that, but you can develop ways to break the game. There's this one really cool trick where you can force the Ravagers into certain rooms just by abusing their targeting AI. For example, every single time you encounter this Ravager on level 1 on these specific stairs, if you look at him and then slowly back up, he will 100% of the time mosey his way into this room on the side. The thing is, how did they even figure this out? It's so cool. And this has no real world application ever. It's a technique specifically for this game alone, specifically on this staircase. There's also several areas in this game that give you an advantage when certain cards are played. If you get a jump boost card played in level 1, you can get a free key in this area and 2 free berry bushes for extra food. There's also this treasure drop location that can only be accessed with jump boost, which drops crowns. In level 2, the jump boost gives you access to this entrance/exit to Willie's Cove, saving you some time on your runs. And on level 3, jump boosts can make hazards that are triggered absolutely useless, as you can just jump over them. The way the cards allow you to interact with the environment is really cool and ties into your strategy when running the dungeon. Can you reach a certain area before the jump boost runs out? Should you wait around and hope that a jump boost card is played to get around a hazard? Do you wait for a speed card to be played before entering Willie's Cove? Or do you just risk it and run in? The way Tango built this map both forces the player to adapt to whatever card was pulled and allows players to choose cards that aid in their strategies. This is where the deck building comes into play. Just to give a small intro on how cards work in Decked Out 2, when you start a run, a card is played every 2 minutes. The effect of the card will be shown on your map to let you know what effects you're getting. There are 4 types of cards: common, uncommon, rare, and the crown shop cards. You can only buy the common, uncommon, or rare cards in the shop after you win a run, and you can only buy the crown shop cards, well, from the crown shop. These cards serve a few purposes. They can help you gain clank block, allowing you to run around the map a little more freely, block hazards, which gives you more options when entering or escaping the dungeon. They can also help you gain treasures in the form of frost embers or coins, allowing you to buy more cards or items from the crown shop after winning a run. And lastly, cards that give you effects, being either jump boosts, speed, or regeneration. Not all of these cards are straightforward. As you get into the more uncommon and rare cards, you'll start to notice that a lot of them have trade-offs. This allows the player to decide how they want to run the dungeon. Are you okay with generating a little bit more clank if it helps you block more hazards? Are you confident in your ability to escape the vexes if it comes to it? What about generating hazards for the chance to drop more frost embers? Is that worth it to you? It's the player's choice. Each player has a different playstyle, making deck building one of the more interesting parts of watching people play this game. Hunger also plays a huge role in the game and is built into both the map design and the monster design. If you don't know what hunger is, just like in real life, you can get hungry. This is meant to be a feature used in survival mode to make the game harder. You can't regen hearts or sprint if you're too hungry. Because of this, usually in Minecraft minigames, the hunger feature is turned off to make the game more playable. You're not supposed to be worried about food in like prop hunt, for example, because you're not trying to do farming side missions, you're just trying to play prop hunt. But the Hermitcraft server isn't just some minigame server. They're actually playing the game in survival mode. Tango couldn't just turn off the hunger while people were running the dungeon, so he decided to work it in and make hunger management an actual skill the players had to develop and worry about. You might have noticed these little berry bushes scattered along each of the floors. These bushes are the main source of food within Decked Out. In a survival world, you're mainly going to use these berries if you're stranded or as a last resort, because they only bring your hunger up by 1 point. Basically, these things kinda suck, but the good thing is, these berry bushes regrow. So in between rounds, Tango doesn't have to go in and actively replace the food. The bushes will just regrow before the next round starts. These berry bushes became a huge part of how the hermits routed their runs, prioritizing hitting as many berry bushes bushes as they could before going deeper into the dungeon. This is perfect within the context of the game. Since these bushes are scattered all across the map, each layer has different trade-offs for trying to obtain food. As explained before, levels 1 and 2 are scattered with these lovely little lads. Since the main way to avoid these ravagers is to either take longer routes or wider turns, Tango decided to shove these bushes in these crammed locations. The risk is that you'll get stuck in here while trying to grab food, and get ravaged by the ravager who took a little stroll and snuck up on you. Levels 3 and 4 on the other hand are scattered with wardens. Now as I said before, the wardens won't necessarily chase you the way ravagers will, but the trade-off is that if you're in need of food, picking the berries out of the berry bush will alert the wardens to your location and anger them. So you do get to walk around a little more safely in levels 3 and 4, but if you've had a bad run on levels 1 and 2 and you're not prepared with enough food to continue down, you will become too hungry to escape and be forced to take your chances with the angered wardens. You have to figure out if it's worth it to trade off some clank and the chance to anger the wardens in exchange for some food. I've mainly been talking about Decked Out 2 in the context of it being a single player game. When you play this game alone like I did, there's no danger of RNG being used against you. Since Tango created this game to be played as a competition, the players would try their best to beat the other players by any means necessary. I already touched on the point of moving the Ravagers and Willie to locations on the map to throw off the next runner, but that's only one example. Since the game was played using 9 phases, with around 10 runs to start each player off per phase, knowledge became a useful resource throughout the competition. Players would begin to use these secrets on each floor to get better runs, landing them more embers to buy better cards. Things like that weird Ravager tech on level 1 were used to pass through the dungeon area more quickly, giving players who knew about it an advantage. In that same way, this kind of knowledge was withheld from other players to make sure that they didn't have an easier time in the dungeon. As I explained before, there's also this store outside where you can exchange the crowns you earn in-game for items. One of these items is the Frozen Shard, which is what you use to start a Decked Out 2 run. Now, since each hermit only starts off with 10 of these each week, being able to buy these became kind of a cheat code. Players who prioritized decks that maximized their crown outputs per run were able to run the dungeon more than 10 times per week, which was a huge advantage early on. This allowed players to get enough embers to place on the board, while also continuing to build their decks to ensure that they can progress to the harder levels. This started the meta of maximizing treasure and frost ember cards, for the players who were aware of it. This store also worked in real time. It had a rotating cycle of items which swapped every 2 hours. Because of the treasure meta, in the later phases there would be lines of people waiting outside the shop for a chance to buy these shards. Since the crown shop could only output 1 shard at a time, it became a war to see who could buy these. People were literally AFKing at the store for 2 hours at a time just for the chance to buy a shard. Since these shards were super rare in the earlier phases, players such as Etho, who took part in the meta of maximizing their crowns per run, were able to make really good trades with other players. This type of trading doesn't really apply to single player mode, since you can use whatever you want. You can max out on cards that will effectively let you go further in your runs without having to think about other players, how many runs you have left in the week, or in reality, the entire crown treasure system. It sounds like less of a headache, but I think it's way more fun the way the Hermits did it. Like, it's not a groundbreaking idea that competition makes games more fun, right? The trading system that the players set up, being able to use the store, being able to sabotage each other, and having to balance between building your decks and collecting tomes week after week makes the Decked Out 2 experience much more enjoyable to watch. This kind of leads me into how I first got into Decked Out 2. I was scrolling through YouTube and I saw a Captain Sparkles video. As I usually do, I'll click on for a couple minutes just to see how he's doing. But when I clicked on his first Decked Out 2 video, I was honestly super intrigued by the game. As I watched him win his first run, it felt more like the end to a roguelike game. Okay, you finish the run and it's time to load the next one, right? And he did. He kept loading them up for like 12 episodes, building his deck after each run. But once I ran out of episodes to watch, I switched over to watching Etho's runs. After reading the comments, it was clear he was the best player, so I opted to watch his instead of the other hermits, and immediately the game became 10 times more intriguing. It was no longer just this dungeon crawler, it became a mystery game, a competition, a strategy game. The game has infinitely more depth in the context of the Hermitcraft server. I mean, there were strategies, like I spoke about prioritizing treasure cards earlier, but there was also strategy in how you would spend your embers each round. Do you prioritize purchasing cards to make your future runs easier, or do you collect tomes and take the wins in the earlier phases? What's the best balance? This allowed the players to make their own plans. People were stacking cards in the early game to become monsters in the late game, buying cards that protected them, gave them more speed and jump boost, which gave them access to discovering the secrets of the map, and being rewarded with more embers in the process. By the late game, everyone had a stacked deck, and it purely became a fight for who could get the most tomes. And the best part is, there was no practicing allowed in the Hermitcraft server. You got your 10 runs per phase and that was it. So all the practice, exploring, discovering the map happened within the intensity of competition, which made going into the game blind way harder and forced these players to be way more cautious. Captain Sparkles, on the other hand, didn't have any of this tension. His runs were unlimited. Let me talk a little bit more about the competition that the hermits had with each other. Each hermit uploaded their own runs in 1 or 2 hour episodes onto their own channels. The first phase went by pretty quickly, only being about an hour long per episode. Not because the hermits were dying quickly, which they kinda were, but because the decks the players were able to build within the first phase were only built to be played on the easiest mode, limiting their exploration of the map mainly to the first floor and making the runs fast. Etho's first run was unfortunate. He was met with a Ravager right out of the gate, and after barely dodging the first one, he got hit with a 1-2 quick one by Tango's Cough, the second Ravager. The previous runner had barely escaped and led all the Ravagers right to the front. He was already 1 shard down within this phase without any additional cards, and more importantly, without any more information to go off of. But in regular Etho fashion, he pursues. On his next few runs, he is successful, and he prioritizes getting more cards, making his future runs easier. By the time he hit his 6th run, Etho felt confident enough to go for a level 2 run. Well, I don't know if he was actually confident about it, but after finding out Good Times with Scar was the very first person to hit level 2 of the dungeon, his competitive spirit awoke, and he dipped his little toes into the water. He made light work of the Ravager guarding the door. Bumbling through bush, his botanical escapade continues as he collects his food. He makes his way through the castle and is met with a beautifully placed crown and a level 1 key. He then makes his way to the Grand Hall and is met with a man guarding the doors to level 2. He hands the key to the Guardian and the doors open. And for the first time, Etho will be seeing level 2. He crawls down slowly and is met with hell. Like, there's lava around or whatever. Luckily, the artifact location is nearby, just across the bridge, and he quickly grabs it and plans to leave. He tries to go back the way he came, but he spent too much time, and a hazard triggered. It's blocked off. Now, he hasn't explored this map before, so he's lost. He has no idea which way he came from and which way to go. He scavenges around for a bit and finds his first parkour hazard that he has to cross to make it back. He has no choice. He goes for it. He fails, but luckily his planning beforehand allowed him to quickly heal up with the berries and go back to try again. He makes it through. With the amount of time that he spent and his clank being high, he needs to get out of there fast. He runs back up the stairs, through the hall, out the building, hitting every clank trigger on the way. With the extra clank from the artifact, the Vexes are activated. He keeps running through, getting chased by the Vexes, and at the last hallway, he meets his final challenge.
Maybe not. You got... No! Oh, half a heart, half a heart. Half a heart, maybe.
He makes it through on half a heart with his first 20 Ember artifact. Now, Good Times with Scar and Etho are the only 2 at this point who have made it out of level 2 successfully, collecting 3 cards in the process and starting a rivalry, which will push this competition through to the end. Now in this first phase, Good Times with Scar takes the win, having spent his embers on 4 total tomes, with Etho and Cubfan submitting 2 tomes each. Now Good Times with Scar may have won this phase, but this would soon be his downfall. Knowing that a tome costs 10 embers, he had spent 40 embers in his first week collecting tomes. These are vital as he could have padded his deck with 5 to 6 more cards to help him on his future runs. Etho, on the other hand, had devised his strategy earlier than the rest, to build his deck stronger and dive deeper into the dungeon earlier. Phase 2 arrives, and Etho with his deck begins exploring the dungeon more on hard difficulty. In the previous phase, he had built up his deck with treasure hunter cards. With this strategy, he's able to collect more coins than anyone else and buy out all the additional shards, giving him more runs within the phase. He starts making runs leaving with 21, 28, 39 coins. He is effectively making enough crowns per run that he has an additional 5 to 6 shards per phase. That's 5 to 6 more chances to build your deck and 5 to 6 more chances to buy tomes. He was snowballing hard, no Nunu and Willem, but he still wasn't reaping what he was sowing. He landed second, tying with Scar. But this was the start of the end. First place in phase 3, first place in phase 4, third place in phase 5. Let's rewind a little bit. Etho and Good Times with Scar were not the only key players during this competition. Cubfan, the Phase 5 winner, had been taking notes, exploring the dungeon, and had successfully managed to do all that while staying closely behind Etho and Scar in terms of points. During Phase 2, Cubfan enters the dungeon already running hard mode. To his surprise, he hits a level 3 compass. At this point, no one had successfully ran a level 3 dungeon, let alone enter level 3. This man begins his run running down the ice cave, snatches a level 2 key, runs through the Ravagers and hits a level 3 key, and seconds after stepping into the Warden's domain, runs around and hops all the way down to the lowest layer. If you look at his compass, his artifact wasn't even on the bottom floor. He just did that for the love of the game. He shimmies his way back up to the top floor, located the artifact, and without even disturbing a single warden, waddled his way back up to level 2. But he wasn't done there. The way I explained this run, it sounds like Cubfan just flew through levels 1 and 2 super quickly. He had spent so long in the dungeon, practically every hazard was triggered. However, this man had taken notes. He's had the experience. He starts making his way back, crossing the chain bridge, one of the hardest hazards to get through. Not only because this parkour is a bit tricky, but because if you fail, you fall down to this lava room. You can survive in this room, but this area is filled with Ravagers, and if they spot you, they can make your escape from this trap nearly impossible. He made it through with no issues. He runs back up to level 2. However, he's not in the clear just yet. His hunger is low. With only 2 hunger bars left, it's unlikely he'll be able to run all the way back home. Now, with the fact that sprinting is a requirement to dodge Ravagers, this could be an issue. The second he steps into level 1, he's met with 2 Ravagers in the room. He runs to evade him, but his hunger drops to 4 bars. He only has 1 hunger bar left before he can't run. By the time he makes it out of the castle, his running has been disabled. With all the sprint jumping that he was doing, he maxed out his clank. He begins his waddling. It was time for him to lock in. Makes the parkour across the river, reaches the ice maze, and you can hear the Vexes in the background. He's walking.
Please, please, please let me up. Oh my God, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Go, go, go. No Ravager, no Ravager. Yes, let's go.
And somehow he makes it out on a level 3 artifact. And it was his first time entering level 3. As he left the dungeon, it grew anxious as a monster was born. Cubfan had cemented himself halfway through the competition as someone to be feared, and he made sure the other hermits knew this, submitting 36 tomes in Phase 6 of the competition, a whopping 7 tomes above 2nd place. And he did the same in Phase 7, submitting 15 tomes, 2 more than 2nd place. But this display of wealth was going to catch up to Cubfan, as he has spent more embers on tomes than he needed to. He missed out on the opportunity to buy the rarer and better cards from the Ember shop. He began to slip, and Etho knew this. He had been saving up to knock out the last 2 phases, coming in 1st place in Phase 8 with 63 tomes submitted. 63 tomes. That is almost double what Cubfan submitted in Phase 8 at 36 tomes. Cubfan and Etho sat neck and neck for Phase 9 at 33 and 36 points collected respectively. Whoever got 1st place in the last phase was going to take it home. This was the phase that was going to make it or break it. And with 65 tomes, Etho takes the win. But she refused. From the 7th rank, Pearlescent Moon enters from the shadows. While Etho and Cubfan and the rest of the players have been competing in tomes, Pearlescent Moon had spent her time discovering the complete ins and outs of the dungeon, discovering a hidden room which awarded 30 additional embers per run, but can only be accessed in a very specific way. Please go watch her Easter egg video run. It's honestly amazing how intricate this map becomes. And although Pearlescent Moon didn't win the competition, she was the only player to get the true ending and essentially won the people's hearts. Throughout heaven and earth, Pearlescent Moon was the decked out one. The decked out 2, actually. Thanks for watching. I just want to give a quick shout out to the Patreon supporters on screen. Please consider changing your name. I don't want to display this on my videos, bro. New video in 10 months.